Lift your head.
Namaskar. I'm sorry, I wish I was able to. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can't hear you. Just a minute.
Oh, we can hear you. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we listen to you. You hear your voice.
Hello?
Yes, very often we listen to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear you. We hear
You
you.
can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can't hear you, doesn't matter. Okay, so thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with such lovely people, and I wish I was there in Delhi with you to meet you all. So please excuse my absence. And Professor Ganesan especially, I'm looking forward to listening to his talk. It's a wonderful thing that over the years there has been a more and more interest in manuscripts, preserving manuscripts, and above all making editions from manuscripts. We know very well, I'm sure you've discussed this, that simply photographing them, it doesn't preserve them, because a paper manuscript lasts much longer than any CD, or even ultimately a hard drive, and technology advances more quickly. So the ultimate preservation of the text is itself its edition and publication. So preservation, edition, publication, study, all of these things work together. I was asked to give a history of Shaiva manuscripts. This is really a rather long business, and I would prefer to talk to you, if you don't mind, a little bit about my work in that context, as time is not very long, as it may be of interest to you, as you are also people concerned with edition and preservation of manuscripts. The Shaiva interest in Shaiva manuscripts has gone right back to the British times. We had people like Mishra, who collected manuscripts in Kashmir, Stein, who did the catalogue in Jammu, Ramveer Library at the beginning of the 20th century, Bengal, along with Hari Prasad Shastri, he did the catalogue of the Nepal Darbar catalogue in Kathmandu, also at the beginning of the 20th century, and then of course throughout the second half of the 19th century, 19th and 20th century, manuscripts have been collected and catalogued, listed by different people. A lot of them are foreigners often, and also a lot of Indian professors, of course, like Chintamani, Hara Chintamani, and so on. And then into the later times, getting closer to our own time, Professor Anand made this is Professor Ganesan will tell us more, I suppose, a very large survey and collection of Agamic, Shaiva Agama, manuscripts and private collections and libraries in South India, and made a wonderful, for a period of 10-20 years, I don't know exactly, a long time. He had transcripts made into Devanagari, and these were very, by the good offices of Professor Goodall, other people, Pondicherry, and this was put up at my suggestion on the Mukta website, so that they are now easily accessible. So South India has its own dimensions. Every region of India has its own particular dimensions, as you know. So talking about the whole of India is really very difficult, or it takes a great deal of time. Back in the 70s, well, people began to study with K.C. Pandey, K.C. Chatterjee before. They began to study what we might call non-dualist Shaivism, or what we call Kashmiri Shaivism, in the beginning of the 20th century. Additions were made, most of them quite good, some of them not so good, by the Research Institute in Srinagar. So we have the whole select and collection, and the scholars have gone through a great deal, as that has become quite a, you might say, a major topic of research nowadays. And in those manuscripts and in those editions, we discovered that there were a large number of texts to which these people refer that had been lost, that we could not find. The focus of this attention, well, one side people were working, of course, on the philosophy. There are all areas to work on, but there are people working on the philosophy, the Pratividya, and other people like myself, and first of all, above all, Professor Sanderson. We were working on the Trika works, the Trika exegesis of Abhinavagupta and his works and the citations especially, and the sources of his citations. Now at the same time, by a happy coincidence, as when Sanderson began to do this research, and I followed as his first student in 1975, when I began also in my PhD at Oxford, by a very happy coincidence in 1970, the Germans invested millions and millions of what are nowadays euros into photographing, making microfilm manuscripts. First of all, of the Darbar collection, which was called National Archives, and then subsequently of manuscripts in private possession, first inside the valley, then outside the valley. Now, this for us was a major source of discovery of what we were looking for, texts that Abhinavagupta is quoting in his Tantraloka, in his Valividyayottara, and his Paratrinshika Vivarana. This search began simply on the basis of looking for sources. As that went on, Professor Sanderson and this modest plodder in his footsteps discovered more and more that there is, of course, a vast literature on Avamic Shaivism, and that this literature, in order to find what had been lost and what it could have contained, needed to be surveyed, and it needed to be recovered. So this is also, as I said, coincided with what Professor N.R. Bhatt was doing in South India for the recovery of what was nowadays in very loose terms called South Indian Shaivism, that is to say Shaiva Siddhanta. His aim was to prove that all 28 Siddhanta Agamas, as listed, did actually exist, which people doubted in his day, and he certainly succeeded in proving that. There were more than 1,500, I think, something like that, transcripts made of manuscripts, a lot of them in Grantha that would have been hard to read anyway. It was the first step forward. So while Professor N.R. Bhatt was busy in South India doing that in that area of South India, Tamil Nadu around there, Sanderson and then myself were focusing on North Indian collections. Now, in the early 80s, I made a small hand list of what loosely called Tantric Manuscripts. I went through the catalogues available, printed catalogues, about 30, 40 institutions, and made a list of manuscripts of texts with book value that have not been published. So this helped me to orientate myself as to the location of texts and the kind of text where they are and what they are. So this I've still not published, but this may be of use to somebody, and I will even it was for me in my early days. What emerges very clearly, and has now become quite standard was that we could really define two periods of Shaivism, what we call early and late. Early are simply the period before Abhinavagupta and comprises the text basically that Abhinavagupta quotes. It happens by very nicely, more than a coincidence, that all the early texts in Nepal, the manuscripts that are preserved in Nepal are rather unique for for South Asia, because some of them could be quite old. We have manuscripts that date back to the 7th century AD. Extremely rare. It's very the Skanda Purana, for example, that people have been editing for years. And we have other manuscripts, of course, as they get younger, less older, numbers increase, but at least 300 Shaiva texts of interest, 300 or 400 that are in manuscripts that predate the 11th century. This is a huge number, and of course we have a lot of copies of texts that were predating the 11th century. So in this way we have what I applied myself to, and Sanderson in his own very special way, is to look through what was good to identify all the early Shaiva Agama that we could find that have been photographed. So I started to do that in the late 70s, and then it continued as they continued to photograph. And this is still a process going on. They finished photographing, and now they're producing a very detailed catalog. But there's a huge number they photographed. I don't know how many, several lakhs of texts and millions of folios, and also Tibetan works that don't control. Right. Now, in the course of that research, it was very easy to establish, of course, that it's not just that we're dealing with single works, but we're dealing with corpus, corpi of literature. A text of substance will belong to a category, the corpus of literature. So, as a person, as a young man, and even as an old man, we cannot study everything, so I needed to focus down. And in my particular case, I chose, out of the early Shaiva Agamas, I chose the Tantras of the Kudrika tradition. And that is the corpus of literature. I worked for 20 years for the IGNCA, producing an edition of the Kumarika Kanda of the Montana Vaida Tantra. That was published in the year 2007. Now, in the course of those 20 years, the published was published in 14 volumes. It could have been done much quicker if I'd have just been concerned with the text, but the text was not intelligible without looking at the whole corpus of literature to which the text belongs. So then I engaged 5 people. I started an office. I ran that office for more than 20 years. 5 people were working full-time in that office, 6 days a week. They learned their Wadi scripts, going as far back as they are, the oldest. I taught them that. They also learned Sharada, because we also had included Sharada manuscripts. Subsequently, also they learned Grantha, and well, of course, they learned the North Indian, Bengali, Maithili, that were required for the manuscripts that were of interest to me. Now, at that time, in those 20 years, I was concerned with producing texts that could be manageable more than simply, after that, let me just tell you before I go on with this. At the end of that period, in 2007, I joined Mukta Gauda. And in Mukta Gauda, we produced something close to 350, 400 e-texts from manuscripts and printed books, right? Now, that work was simply concerned with single individual items, single manuscripts, single publications. right? This, I can say now, is a major tool for research nowadays. You can do global searches. If you look up the word Shakti and you search Shakti, then it'll appear on the screen in a folder, hundreds of references with all they are in all the texts that have been typed out in that collection, right? So, of course, a very valuable tool. But in the first instance, in the first 20 years, I was concerned with preparing texts for edition. I was concerned with being able to read these texts very carefully, to study them, and to have texts in a way that could be easily edited. Maybe not to edit the whole of them, but to edit the parts that were necessary for me to write the notes to the edition that I was making of the Kumarika Kanda of the Mantana Vaidava Tantra. The Kumarika Kanda of Mantana Vaidava Tantra is 6,000 verses. More than 7 lakhs of searches were made for all variant readings within the manuscripts and in other manuscripts of related schools in order to establish whether a reading in the text should be amended or corrected, or it should be left as it is, because the form of the Sanskrit there is what we call Aisha. If it's Aisha Prayoga, then the reading should be kept as it is, because it's not a mistake. It's the form in which the Sanskrit is something equivalent, perhaps less sophisticated, to what is called nowadays Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit, right? There's a lot to say about that. This is a lot to discuss. Any person who is editing these texts of an early period is always confronted with this problem. Should I correct because this is a scribal error, or should I keep the reading as it is because this is what you might call irregular Sanskrit or Aisha Sanskrit, okay? So for this reason also, I needed to consult other manuscripts and to have them in close to edited form. So for this reason, instead of typing very many, hundreds of texts, as could have happened, I only worked on about 20 or 30, but had them collated. So I have collations, for example, a lot of them are centered on the worship of the goddess Kupika, but there are 3 or 4 main categories. The texts of Kupika Tantra, all of these are unpublished. Text from Krama system of the Kali Krama, a text from other texts like early Vishwasa Tattva Samhita, the Brahmayana. Now, in the 20 years, 25 or more years since that was done, then a number of people have taken them up independently without making use of my transcriptions, because people I don't think even know that they exist. So Vishwasa Tattva Samhita has also been partially edited by the people in Pondicherry and Associates, and part of the Brahmayana has also been published, and a series was set up, what is called early tantric texts, in which some of these texts that I've had for 20, 30 years have independently now been collated and edited. Now there is a large residue that remains in my possession, and that I would like to have the work completed. It would be very nice to do. Some of these actually, for example, with 6,000 verses collated with more than 20 manuscripts. Can you imagine the immense time it would take to collate 20 times 6,000 verses? Okay? We have the 4 chapters of the Jayadratayamala. This is a text of extremely high quality, of very, very great historical importance for early Tantrism, early Shakti Tantrism, Kali in particular. This is a text that runs into 6,000 verses, four groups of 6,000 called Shaktas. All the manuscripts for that have been collated, and the preliminary rough edition has been made. Similarly, the whole of the Brahmayana, but that has been done by other people. In the Kupika tradition, there's the Yoga Kanda, Agya Kanda, and other texts that run into maybe 1 or 2, well, maybe 1 lakh. of folios that have been edited. Some part has been also translated. Some part has been, extensive notes have been made. Now that's sitting in my computer there for the past 20 odd or more, 20, 30 years. Right? At my age, at present, I have just finished another work that is going to be published soon in 12 volumes. I would rather like to continue with the study of music. I'm also a musician, not like a scholar. I would like to catch up a bit in the latter part of my life with that. But I would be very happy if these texts were to be taken up and completed. There isn't a person who knows Sanskrit on the subject, and within 2 or 3 years, a whole series could be put up. Short of that, I would simply have them all put in Devanagari and put up in some way, maybe in Amazon Books or something like that, even if they're not complete editions. This. I'd like to, if I've gone through this rather quickly, perhaps I should have said that to the end. This is basically what I wanted to tell you. If you're in the recovery, if we're talking in general about the recovery of Shaiva manuscripts, well, the major sources to go very carefully. There's some areas of work now that also I've been left to do. This work is done regionally. The work is done regionally. There are texts that are interregional and that cover the whole of the subcontinent, and there are texts that are regional, large regions, small regions. These regional work also coincides to some degree also with types of text that we're looking at. Siddhanta texts nowadays tend to be in South India, although we know very well that Siddhanta extended throughout the whole of India. So Shambhu, for example, made a very important product in the 11th century with the Kashmiri. And the Siddhanta works that Abhinav Gupta quotes and Istantraloka, manuscripts of all those have been recovered. Those Siddhanta works that he quotes, the manuscripts have been recovered all in Nepal, confirm that at his time this was the extent of the Siddhanta, and that it existed in North India, that Abhinav Gupta could have access to it. So, as I said, regional, when we study or look for manuscripts, we find ourselves often also working in areas, in places, Orissa, Nepal, Tamil Nadu, Kashmir, and in these places looking for the manuscripts of those areas. Some manuscripts will, of course, I like this, carry over from one place to the next. Okay. A great deal has been done, and more is going on Steve Pondicherry, with Professor Ganesan knows a great deal more than I do about what's going on there. In the earliest Shaiva Agamic texts, like Shiva Dharma, Shiva Dharmottara, that also was the manuscripts of that. There is a beautiful early 11th century Ajmoli manuscript. I have photographs of that. That is in Nepal, and we find them also amongst the transcripts that Ganesan had made, so that they also found in South India. People are beginning, I think, to edit the Shiva Dharma and Shiva Dharmottara. There's a bundle there called Maheshwari Samvada, Dharma Pustika. It's a bundle of manuscripts, so we find that same bundle in Nepal as we find the same bundle in South India, which means that obviously they were taken together. They're a kind of Shaivism which is quite close to Puranic. They're very much concerned with prayaschitta, they're much concerned with building wells, building roads, social works, the kind of things that Puranas recommend that bring punya to kings and wealthy people. So the Shiva Tantric, they also had some beginnings of tantric practice, mantras of the sort that we find become developed in the Shiva Dharma, in the Vishwasa Tattva Samhita, where we find the first kind of forms and structures that become standard for all Shaiva ritual and indeed Vaishnava ritual, into which that Shaiva ritual carried over. For example, nyasas of mantras with the angas, the head, the heart, the head, the top knot, the armor, and the weapon, sometimes the eye. They succeed syllables like the flame, and so on, we find mentioned for the first time in being this extensively in the Samhita. So it's a great read for people like me who've been working with these texts to see the origin, the earliest origins of these procedures. Along with that, people have sometimes dated as being around about the same date, but that's hard to say. Is a Tantra of a completely different nature, the Bhairava Tantra. The deity of the Vishwasa Tattva Samhita is a kind of mild Sadashiva or Rudra. These are carries over from pre-existing Pashupata. The pre-existing Pashupata, they had a corpus called the Ashtapramana, of which we only have a few fragments. Maybe more are being recovered. There's the work of anyway, he's in Oxford now, on Pashupata Shaivism, and Pashupatas were of two kinds. I wrote about this in the early 80s. I think Sanderson has carried that on until we found out more. There were Brahmins, and we might call Shuddha, and there were people who are not Brahmins, and they're forming a vow, all of these, like a kind of prayaschitta. And the ones who are not Brahmins, they would wear garlands of human bones and carry skulls. So those kind of people developed into what are called Kapalikas, or Soma Siddhantas, and the kind of Tantra that the Brahma Yamala is the kind of Tantra these kind of people would follow. The god of that Tantra is Kapalisha, and Kapalisha Bhairava. There are a good number of Kapalisha lingas all over India. There are 3 in Benares, one of them in Manikarnika. You'll be happy to know. There's another Portugal in Kolhapura, Kapali. So this, from the Brahma Yamana, we have the first extensive worship of Matrikas and the beginnings of yoginis, large numbers of female forms. And these female forms are grouped into families called kulas. And these families are the families that correspond to the 8 mantrikas that are set in the directions, the wives of Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, and so on, Brahmani, Maheshwari, Dhyani, etc. Okay? So from here, in other words, we have the early roots of what later became Kaulism, which is Shakta, and like this, the offerings and the rituals are performed very often in cremation grounds, very impure places for the Siddhanta. Meat and wine and blood and human bodily fluids and so on are offered. Largely the deities are wrathful but also benign, or what I call erotic. And Brahma Yamana perhaps represents the first very extensive text, 12,000 verses in which all this is. These kind of procedures are different. Okay? The other very great text that has not at all been published yet, that is in my computer and that should really be published, is the 4 chapters of the Jayagata Yamala. The Jayagata Yamala has a pleroma of female forms, a huge number of female forms, especially wrathful ones, Kalis and Lakshmis. But here the Lakshmis are red and fierce. They're not sort of benign like Vishnu Lakshmi, the Lakshmi we commonly know. And it's within that milieu that a tradition develops called Krama, came to be called Mahakrama, or sorry, Mahanaya, Maharta, Krama system, which is centered around, which has the conception of consciousness as being made of a pleroma of energies, cognitive energies, and that these energies are pouring out in a rhythm of creation and destruction through the senses, through the bodies, through the minds, and through the pure consciousness of infinite being, of deity itself. And in this process, the one is created and destroyed, and huge pantheons of divine forms corresponding to these worlds that arise and fall away momentarily are described in many prayogas, in these 24,000 verses of this text. The idea then is that the absolute is time. Time is the flow of cognitive consciousness in the world, and going through something called the means of knowledge. All of this already appears in texts of phenomenal beauty. I am publishing some of these now in my Tantra Loka that will be out very soon, in 12 volumes. So that's there. Soon after this, we come to the Kujika Tantras. In parallel to this, earlier than the Jayataka Yamna, but developing in parallel, is the Trika. Trika, the earliest Tantras, this is the Yogeshwari Mata, of which we only have 2 manuscripts, though some of them partially edited. Then another text called Tantra Sadbhava. That Tantra Sadbhava I put up on the net. It's the only text that I have partially edited, and people have acknowledged that it's mine. Otherwise, all the others I put up, they simply stole and said that they did themselves. I have at least a dozen people who are my disciples. Hidden Gupta Shishya. So I'm rather tired of that. I'm not putting them up anymore in e-text form. I'm either going to put it in print or not at all. It's really unfair that people's work should be treated that way, right? So that means the whole corpus of Krama system. I had all the manuscripts all collated, a great deal of it edited, of the whole Krama system from the earliest 24,000 verses of the Jayataka right the way through to the text of Shivananda, who brought it to Kashmir, and formally into Purvasavana Gupta. Okay? Then you see, parallel with that, they are running with the Trika text. The Trika text, Abhinavagupta mentions about 12 or 13 Trika Tantras in his Tantra Loka, of which unfortunately we only have the Siddhi Yogeshwari Mata, the Mani Vijayottara, the Tantra Sadbhava. Yes, these 3. The Tantra Sadbhava, partially edited, has been acknowledged as my work by some gracious miracle, or I don't know what God inspired honesty in some scholar, and you find it in bibliographies, in standard works of Pondicherry, by some miracle, I don't know. Thank you very much for whoever was honest enough to do that. That text needs to be completed. That text needs to be fully edited and translated and studied. Okay, that's about 6,000 verses. There's a nice project for some. So similarly, the Mantana Bhairava Tantra, I edited 6,000 verses, translated and put them up on and published in 14 volumes, 500-page volumes. Edited in the Gandhi National Center for the Arts. I think it's the largest single project by an individual that has ever been published by them. Although that doesn't make any difference to me, but just as a matter of interest. Why this is relevant is because there are 3 or 4 other parts of the Mantana Bhairava Tantra. There's the Yogic Kanda, the Argya Kanda, and the Siddha Kanda, of which I've collated all the manuscripts, made partial editions, sometimes extensive notes, almost translation. So that all that needs to be completed. There are also independent works within that school, like the Chichimata Sara, It's about 700 verses, but of extremely high quality. This is one of the finest texts I've ever seen in print or in manuscript. That also has been edited and is to be fully completed. Otherwise, the Shikura from Yoda. Then there's, of course, the Shatsa Hasrika. The Shatsa Hasrika I have edited with the commentary. Is an expanded version of the Kukika Mata Tantra. The Kukika Mata Tantra is the root tantra of the Kukika tradition. 3,500 verses. All 3,500 verses are embedded in the 6,000 verses of the Shatsa Hasrika. That comes along with a commentary, a brief commentary. I have edited all that and translated most of it. I would like somebody to finish that in a couple of years. That should be done. That would be published in about 3 or 4, 5 or 600 page volumes. Then there is the Shrimad Uttara, which is another expansion of the Kukika Mata. That's in 6,000 verses. As I said, that's been collected with, I think, something like 18 manuscripts. So that is edited to a large extent, so that should need to be completed. There has been an edition, but it's only been with 2 manuscripts, and it was done on the basis of 1 manuscript that I lent to Professor Pandey, who was the head of the editions department of the Varana. I lent that manuscript to him. He forthright went to simply published it without any recognition. That was bought by a friend of mine who was working at the university, and the finance was put there as having given it a manuscript. So just to let you know, although it doesn't matter really. But it's just, anyway, now I have a much better edition. So that also needs to, should be completed. So these are basically, now that Kukika Tantras, as I said, the Trika Tantras, there are about 11 or 12 that are mentioned by Navagupta. I'm mentioning the Kukika Tantras because the Kukika Tantras are actually a form of Trika. They are development of Trika. So the other manuscripts, I'm afraid that have been lost, are the Trika Tantras that I've been mentioned, like the Viravali, the Shiva Vaidava Tantra, there are others. I list all this in my edition of the Portugal translation with commentary and extensive notes that is about to come out within a month or 2 in 12 volumes, 500 pages, 12 volumes of 500 pages each. And, okay, so there's, now the Kukika Tantras are very important because they are a major source for Sri Vidya. There is a kind of chain, my friends. One group, you see, leads to the next. So you find that if you're looking on the what you might call the Shakta side, from the Brahma Yamala, you can see developments into the next traditions to form a chain, until you reach Sri Vidya, which is the last of what you might call the early texts. This is evidenced, for example, in the very name Mantana Vaidava Tantra, the Kukika tradition, because it refers to the Mantana Vaidava Yajna, which is performed in a smashana with a tantric partner that's described in the Brahma Yamala. And it is said that in the colophons, the Mantana Vaidava, what is called Mantana Vaidava Tantra, that this tantra was revealed in the course of that Yajna. So it's a misnomer, but it shows us how there is continuity from the earlier to later. Similarly, further ahead, there is a triangle that is described, which is at the center of the Kukika mandala. That triangle is described for the first time in the Tantra Sadbhava, which is a Trika text. The same verses, while 3 lines of those verses are extended into 4 lines in the Kukika Mata Tantra, taken from the Tantra Sadbhava, those lines, some additional words are added, and the pitas are projected into the corners and the center, Purnagiri, Jalandhara, Kamarupa, and Udiyana. Now that triangle with the sitas, and so on, is put in the center of Sri Vidya, of Sri Yanka. and the gurus in those pieces are called the yogis. So in this way, then I'm giving you a very example of how one school leads to another, and we have a chain. So that everywhere along the line, we need to actually have additions and study them and see how these developments take place. So these are one of the things for the future. So I am very happy if somebody is interested, you know anybody, I'm very happy to send details of possible work to people who like to complete and save many years of labor. I mean, the collations took me 20 years. It's 5 people working full time. So some of those texts, as I said, have been edited independently, but you've got at least 10 years of work, 15 years of work by 5 people full time that's already been done for you, and a good 10 years of my work with the edition and translations of notes. Okay? So this is basically it. Whoever is interested to go ahead with that, then I'd be happy. But I'd like my name on the cover, of course, if you like to do that. If not, it doesn't matter. In a few years I'll be gone. In a few years we'll all be gone. With all the other Shaivas before us. Okay, so now I just 1 or 2 words very quickly. After the 12th, 13th century, Tantrism changed radically in North India. South India continuity was somehow maintained with Pancharatra and Vaishnava Siddhanta, so the early Siddhantas continued into later. But in North India, there was a great change that was marked by a text called the Prapanchasara Tantra, and the continuation of the Prapanchasara Tantra, the Sharada Tilaka. And in the Prapanchasara Tantra, the Sharada Tilaka, a completely new way, an approach to a procedure was taking place. Am I over time? No, not yet. I hope this is interesting to you. None of this has been written by anybody. What I'm telling you is totally new. I don't know if these things interest you. Between
Hello, Mark. Hello, Mark. Are you able to hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, I'm Ganesan from Pondicherry.
Yes. Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you for your information on your various research projects which you have been doing all along. And I would be thankful to you if you just inform us, the scholars here, what are your latest projects you are involved in critically editing.
Yeah, if you please send me an email, I will send you a list of everything.
Is it possible?
I will send, if there is someone who is interested, and maybe to do some work or something, I'm very happy to send a list of everything I have, of what is there. And if anybody wants to go ahead with that, I'm of course very happy to assist in any way.
Yes, but present work which you are engaged in which work are you engaged? Presently, you are engaged in which work?
I have just finished the Tantra Loka, and I am now engaged in playing sitar.
Tantra Loka,
I play sitar and teach. And what I'm actually doing, some people are actually going through Shastrastika. There are a lot of diagrams in there. They are being drawn properly. This thing is happening. I just finished this Tantra Loka. It took me many years of very hard work, and yes, I'm happy to play music. Music is wonderful.
Yes, it is nice to hear that Tantra Loka is being critically edited. You have the...
I don't play with Tantra Loka.
Okay.
Bigger people than me, everybody better than me, and I'm the smallest of the small. But nonetheless, you may find, not you, perhaps other people will find something of interest in that.
Yes. I also heard that Professor Sanderson is also engaged in critically editing.
Yes, he will produce his own. Let him produce his own. Swami Lakshmi just produced his. Shyam Prakash, Professor Shastri made one translation. Some other Gautam made one translation. Lillian Silva, chapters 1 to 5 in French.
No.
Noli in Italian.
Yes.
Each one has their own thing.
Yeah.
Mine is with along with their this commentary, and there are many more notes than the text.
Okay. You
It's
have
very extensively annotated.
okay. You have more readings.
Professor Sanderson will no doubt contribute very much. I will read it with great interest. One of the qualities of my work is that the translation is very close to the original. I not produce explanations, I produce translation. And so that it can simply be useful as a work of translation. Other people often they like to explain as they go along, which is very good, excellent. I prefer to put my explanation in the notes.
Excellent.
So the work is put in as good in English as possible, immediately intelligible, with as close as possible to the literal, so that it can be simply used as a translation. Okay. So that is one of the qualities. Also, I have looked for cross-reference everything that Abhinav Gupta said about himself, his own work, and other people within the tradition from the Sanskrit. And I went through the manuscripts I could find for texts like the Dyczkowski and so on that Abhinav Gupta mentions and had not been published. And then Sanderson will have done much more, will do much better, and that's fine. I simply did that for myself and for the benefit of others who like to really know what it means, literally. And then for others, again, who could be more advanced, what it means more extensively in a deeper sense, they can look at other works. Yeah. These other things that I have, I would very much like to share with somebody who would be enthusiastic to work with me on that. If there is such people, I'd be very glad to meet them. Otherwise, I will find some other way.
Okay. After Tantra Loka, what is your plan to take up? Which text are you interested in?
After Tantra Loka, try Siddhartha. I've been studying Siddhartha from my teenage. And I spent a lot of time with all these other intellectual activities, and I would like to end my life as a reasonably decent musician. And the research work, we'll be putting up e-text also on my website.
Yes. Could you tell me?
Used before.
Yes.
Something like 100, 150 e-texts are going up on the website.
Okay. Could
So
you
these are
share?
not the ones I've been talking about.
Could you share about the details of the manuscripts of Tantra Loka?
Huh?
Details, what are the provenance of the manuscripts of Tantra Loka? The
Analysis of Tantra Loka.
yes.
Well, you have notes that go on pages and pages and 200-300 pages of appendix to each volume.
No, manuscripts did.
Manuscripts?
Yes.
Manuscripts.
Yes.
And check the manuscripts. There are not many, and they are all, they can all be made available. I think I'm in one. Maybe also has them in the Montalbano office. If not, I can leave them there. There are only 5 or 6, 4 or 5 complete manuscripts with the commentary and some fragments, not extensive. But they're mostly in Shalda, but not only. They're very accurate compared to Nepalese manuscripts, extremely accurate, because the people who copy them are obviously learned people, and were copying them for their own use, it seems. So they take great care. And unfortunately, with the Paratrinshika, other works like Mani Vijayvartika, the edition is very poor, because there are only 1 or 2 manuscripts, and those are quite corrupt. Okay? So Paratrinshika Vivarana, there are only 2 manuscripts. They are copies of one another, or 1/3, which is a common source. So Nyoli, who edited that, has had a hard time correcting it, because that was not okay. Because the manuscripts, these manuscripts are in the valley, they tend to just stay there. So the one we had is a rather incestuous group, so the mistakes carry over from one to the other. So they're of relative help. But on the other hand, like Tantric, fortunately, I made a good number of emendations going along. I tried to edit as I could, but I don't publish an edition with it because that would be far too much work. But I can make that accessible. We put it up on my website. You can have the collated version of the Tantric, and even I can put up the manuscripts so people can look at them. And if you require to do that. Yeah.
Anirban speaking, sir. I have a question.
Yeah.
Actually, as you know, that the conference or the seminar is about identification of unpublished manuscripts. So I would like to request you kindly highlight 2 or 3 texts so that the students can transcribe, and later we will find out some scholar to edit. So I request you at least 2 to 5 texts now.
Yes. Okay. Well, you see, I have made a hand list that Anil Banji, he checked the ones in Pune and found the numbers were wrong. Because I mixed up Pata with Pune and P for that, so that needs to be checked. But you see, I think, if you don't mind me saying, learned sirs, that before we go, it would be nice to have a general survey in all different areas, Nyaya manuscripts, Mimamsa manuscripts, Vaisheshika, and aesthetics, whatever, with different groups. So in this way, I wanted, I was a child, I was in the 80s. I went through all the catalogs I could find for what I call just tantric manuscripts. So that covered the general areas, Siddhanta, Lingayat, Shaivism, Vaishnava, Pancharatra, all kinds that we could generally call themselves tantric. Okay? So I just noted down manuscripts of unpublished texts, mostly all unpublished. They're a good number. I could make that available. I will at my website. I'm producing a website now with e-text and this thing I could put up. So people may be helped with that. There are, you know very well that the published catalogs are very few. The unpublished works are with, you see, can I just say one small thing that is perhaps obvious to a lot of you, but I think it's said. To find one good manuscript that is unpublished and of value, historical or for its content, you have to go through thousands. It's like looking for diamonds. You have to dig out tons and tons of earth to find one small diamond. Okay? So mass photography of libraries, of manuscripts, is very good to a certain point, but what needs to be done is to identify. So for example, the whole Jammu and Kashmir collection, there are only about 20, 30 manuscripts there that are of value, of some great value. The rest are not so much, 20, 30, 40, not more, out of some thousands, right? So the first thing, if you want the person to identify, is they should go through all the catalogs they can. Nowadays, in the 80s, all I had was the printed ones. Now the National Manuscript Project has made a lot of other catalogs and hand lists and so on. I think it's very important to get to people's private collections before they're dispersed, because we know very well in the 19th century, if you look at catalogs made in the 19th century, they tell you where these manuscripts are in people's homes. So full of that's long gone, okay? So similarly, if you want to catch and locate manuscripts in private collections, that should be done quickly, otherwise you lose everything. So at least I suppose you should look at that. You should have people who know the subject carefully going through as much as possible and searching for possible titles, right? Now, if you like, myself or anybody, you can form a small committee. When you have such people, they make a list from available what they've gone through. You make a bibliography of everything you've gone through, and then you make a list of possible manuscripts that are of interest. These could be forwarded to a committee, and then they could be graded according to what is more important, middle, and not so much. No. So in this way, that's how I began, without any committee or anything. In my very small, very initial work, just going through the catalogs in the 80s, I found located about 300 or 400 manuscripts that were of unpublished works. At least 300 or 400 unpublished works of different schools. And also I noticed at that time, I'd just like to finish here, that it's not only single manuscripts that you discover, but you discover whole corpuses of literature. For example, there was the yoga text. Now, Lavala, they have made a whole library just of yoga shastra. All right? Now, similarly, there are Kaula Tantras. They form a whole corpus. Right? So in this way, those people who go through these searches, you will not only find single texts, but you find groups that work together. Okay? And these are inroads into the history, because in the long term, in the long run, we want to have an overall view, and that these single texts should be detailed of that larger map. Okay? So this is what I would suggest. And if someone like that, I'm not going to give out anything to anybody on a simply private basis. I've done that. At least 20 of my works I've lost in this way to people who are not willing to acknowledge me. Even very, very senior scholars when I was a young. So I would be happy to cooperate, very happy, honored. I don't know how to say, I'm at your feet, sirs. All of you to cooperate, but in such a way that whatever I may contribute, however small, that it should be in some way acknowledged. Okay? So this is all.
Thank you, sir.
I can say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like to request the chairman, Professor Praful Kumar Mishra ji, to give his remarks. He was the chairman of this session, sir. Mark ji. Professor Praful Kumar Mishra ji. So he will give his remarks.
Thank you, sir. Professor Mark. Professor Mark has used collection and used them.
Could you speak into the microphone, please, sir? I can't hear you.
Sir?
The microphone. Yes.
Yes, I am speaking on microphone. Do you remember? Do you listen
Thank
to
you.
me?
No, that's okay.
So, Professor Mark presented his paper, his lecture, so to say, basically on the collection of Tantric manuscripts and mostly the Shaiva texts, particularly from Kashmir texts. And he has a long way, even though he was speaking on, he's speaking on something called different type of Jamanas and different school of Shaiva, and he referred to Kumarika Tantra, Brahma Jamala, which is, he referred a book of 6,000 verses and recovering the Shaiva manuscript. He used to say that the regional manuscripts be taken to the confidence from all quarters for the edition, and regarding the confirmation of the text, he uses from different parts of the country. He moved from different parts of the country, from Odisha, Nepal, Tamil Nadu, Kashmir, and collected the Bamboo manuscripts of Nepal and he finds the Shaivism close to Purana and Dharma Shastra, because in many texts, in many tantric texts which we go through, Ganesan will speak more about this because he is expert of the subject. But however, in these tantric texts, we find many prayaschitas and prayaschita jaga and many works for kamya karma, namitika karma. And as regards the tantric practices, the manuscript which is not known to the rest of the world is called the Atharvangirasa Kalpa of Paipalada Samhita. And since the Atharvangirasa Kalpa is not published in its original way, people have different texts with variant meanings, so that you cannot say that this is the original text. I have seen so many manuscripts on Atharvangirasa Kalpa, which is published, one fellow from Odisha published in Odia script, and another manuscript long before, about 30-40 years. My professor K.C. Acharya gave me one manuscript of Atharvangirasa Kalpa, but that is full of practices, tantric practices, avicharas, which is similar to the text which I read, that is Ganasiddhi of Ganasiddhi, you know, of Indravuti. So, in Odisha also we have a mixture of tantric practices, and many stotras are there inside the tantra, and many historical informations are there, and that is not a strict rule, and strict we cannot say. As for example, one text I would say, Durga Jajana Deepika and Durgosava Chandrika, all these texts are only pertain to one type of worship. As regards the Kashmiri text, of course I am not authority on Kashmiri text, but Kashmiri text they reveal the inner consciousness. So these tantric texts are mystic in its nature. They reveal different types of steps of consciousness. That's why the scholar, Professor Mark, who is expert in revealing those things, he says the Pasupata Tantra, Shaiva Tantras and Brahmana Tantras in his own way, and he also consulted Brahma Jamala, where the female folks are described, those female tribes are described, which are the female counterpart of Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, etc. And there is the practice of Panchamakara is there. And Jayadratha Jamala is also a huge text of whom there is Mahanari and so many practices up there, which has 20,000 verses as informed by him, and they are all, he tried to incorporate in Tantra Loka, which is his magnum opus. For last so many years he has tried to get with Kachika Tantra, Trika Tantra, Tantra Sarvasva, and 24,000 verses of Shivananda in Abhinav Gupta's text, and he also consulted Siddha Yogeshwara Tantra, Tantra Sarvaloka, Tantra Sara, which is having 700 verses, Sahasrasika, Kupika Matra Tantra, which has 2,600 verses, and there are so many volumes voluminous work which is neglected in our country. They think that all the tantras are the street magicians. The tantric works are only based on the street level magicians or the witchcraft, the short works, but they are all misnomer. They are all revealing different types of the chakras of the body, which is being recited today by me. So this is again he refers about the Kupika Tantra of 6,000 volumes, and they are published in 2 volumes, 500 pages each. Then the Manthan Bhairav Mantra, Kupika Mandala, Kupika Mata Tantra, they are also found in that. In this connection, there are certain texts of Natha yogis, which is Purnagiri, Jalandhara and Tantrajana. And this school reaches, in one way, we have also Pancharatra style. Pancharatra is probably in the South India. Yes, yes.
But also prevalent in Kashmir also.
Kashmir Pancharatra, then Vaishnava Ratra. Oh, Ratra it means Jnana. Ratra means knowledge.
They have different explanations for that.
So here he also is very happy to know that he has lots of manuscripts to his collection, and he has his hand notes. The scholars and the mission shall be immensely benefited if they will see the manuscripts, and his suggestion is very much pragmatic. When he said that the scholars around will see to the text and verify them and found the significant text thereof, identified them, and they go for the publication immediately. Because I am also of the same opinion that if we could not get quickly to the action to retrieve the text in different distant villages, they will be not available anymore. They will be destroyed either by white ants or by flood, cyclone, or taken away to the lap of fire and water. So I am very thankful to Professor Mark, who is a mine house of knowledge of tantric text and tantric practices, and his authority on tantra text, who has dedicated his life for the editing of tantric text, Tantraloka and others, and we should take advantage of his knowledge. Thank you.
एक जिज्ञासा है सर।
हाँ?
एक जिज्ञासा है,
हाँ।
तंत्र मंत्र यंत्र ये दोनों एक दूसरे से जुड़े हुए हैं। तो महाउपाध्याय देवनाथ ठाकुर का तंत्र कौमुदी और मंत्र कौमुदी बहुत विस्तृत रूप में छपी हुए है MRI से, मिश्रा रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट से। क्या यंत्र का ये सामूहिक कोई पुस्तक छपी है या है ऐसा मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट?
हाँ,
यंत्र का
हाँ, यंत्र का टेक्स्ट छपी हुई है, लेकिन ऐसा कोई वो बताएगा। Mark will answer. His query is there any text published exclusively on yantras?
Sorry, where?
Is there any text published pertaining yantras only?
Pertaining yantra.
Yantra, yes.
Madhu Khanna, and he published some text containing yantras. Also, Bonama.
Bomber.
And Damodar Das is also. Damodar, he made a text on yantra that is also being published. Yantra.
Damodar.
There is a book by one called Damodara.
No, Damodar is South India, na? South India. And he wants to say, is there any distinction of tantric mantras and Vedic mantras in that text?
Sorry, what was that?
Yes, that's it. You explain.
Basically different. that is there any distinction? They are basically
There is
distinct.
no distinction, I think.
No, they are entirely distinct.
Actually different.
They are different.
No, different.
Different.
But I'm not telling of jantras, mantras and tantric mantras.
Yes.
They are different.
Different.
But are they are given separately in the text?
No, the Tantra texts majority of them do not follow Vedic mantras.
That's true.
I will come to that in the Shaiva Agama sentence. That is
But in the Vaishnava Agamas,
the same situation Vaishnava also.
ऐसा कोई भी काम देखते हैं शुभ कार्य में यज्ञ आदि कर्म में मंत्र तो रहता ही है, तो वहाँ कोई भी विधान यंत्र बनता है और उसका उपयोग भी होता है।
देखिए स्मार्ट प्रैक्टिस में
जी
वैदिक और तांत्रिक मिला के करते हैं।
जी
देखिए सूर्य पूजा होता है, सूर्य पूजा पहले किसी यज्ञ में सूर्य पूजा में सूर्य का यंत्र लिया जाता है। जितने सारे यंत्र का विधान है वो सारा का सारा यंत्र से मेजॉरिटी तांत्रिक।
जी
आगम की जितनी भी शाखाएं हैं
जी
सबके संहिता भाग में
हाँ।
यंत्रोद्धार की विधि हुई रहती है और यंत्र वस्तुतः एक इलस्ट्रेशन है। उस यंत्रोद्धार विधि को पढ़कर कोई भी जो आर्टिस्ट है वो यंत्र बना सकते हैं, इसलिए यंत्र।
Mark, I request you to please highlight on this matter. Huh?
So Mark, he wants your some enlightenment on the yantra as part of tantra. Is there any
Sorry,
part where they
I'm
are?
having trouble hearing you all. What did you say, sir? Can I
Yantra, can you shed some light on yantras as part of the tantras? Yantra, yes. In what way they are related? In what way yantra is related to the mantra?
No, in the early period, yantra is a place where the deity is worshipped. Every deity has its mantra, major mantra. Every deity has its major yantra. Okay? Now, the yantra is the location of the deities that surround and attend upon the main deity. So this can be drawn in a diagram, or it can be elaborated with a drawing, right? Now some deities are great deities, major deities, and these yantras become major yantras, just like the deities are, like Sri Vidya and Sri Chakra. So Kumkika was like this, okay? Other deities are minor deities, or the prayogas so you may also perform very simple basic rituals for specific purposes. These are called prayogas or kalpas. Prayoga is a Vedic term, kalpa also is Vedic, but you find it in the Tantra. So if you want to, I don't know, capture some girl, or you want to kill some enemy, or you want to do something like that, then there are special yantras for that, mantras for that, and that also is related to the deity who is helping you to perform these works. These are called kalpas. So there are maybe many yantras. In the course of an expensive puja, you will have the central yantra with the main deities, and you may have many subsidiary yantras, each one with subsidiary deities, and around which other deities are stationed that worship them, like this. So you find sometimes that you find many mandalas yantras are being drawn around the central one. One is being done for purification, another is being done for invocation, another is being done to place the Arva Patra, another one is being done for the Naivaidya, another one is being done to place the incense, another one is done for the Upacharas, others are drawn to worship attendant deities. So like this you may find in very elaborate pujas many yantras being drawn. But the principle is always the same. In the center is the main deity, and around is the surrounding entourage. whether they're attendants.
It is
There
a
is a
chakra.
main yantra and then there are subsidiary yantras.
Is it a chakra of jantras? Cycle of jantras.
Yeah, that's all. Okay, it's enough.
Is it a cycle of jantras that the main deity is in the when chakra puja is done? Chakra puja, the sadhak is in the middle
Portal.
and the uttara sadhakas around him, and they have their own.
Navagraha Yantra Puja is there.
Huh?
Navagraha Yantra Puja.
No, Navagraha Yantra Puja is
Along with that, that is not
सुनिए
there.
सर, शंकराचार्य ने भी कहा है न मंत्रम नो यंत्रम, वो कुछ नहीं जानते हैं। न मंत्रम नो यंत्रम तदपि चले जाने स्तुति महो।
By the time of Shankaracharya, you see, please listen to me, please listen. By the time of Shankaracharya, Tantra was very much established, isn't it?
No.
Ganesan ji, am I correct? By the time of Shankaracharya, Tantric practices and Tantric texts were established.
Already
So it is nothing new because this sloka which there is also Sri Yantra is there. Shankaracharya's sloka, Sri Yantra, all the yantras are there in the mantra of Anandalari and Sundaralari slokas. In the South Indian edition, we find all the yantras they have explained.
Saundarya whether it is still debatable whether Shankara has composed it, because a lot of variation between the Saundarya idea and the Brahma Sutra Vedanta.
That is true.
So
That
we
is
cannot connect it.
Whosoever is the Shankaracharya in the Sundaralari, all the slokas are identified with the different chakras, different jantras, and accordingly the mantra is worshipped. It is a practice of the tantrics to worship a mother divinity through different jantras through the sloka in the Sundaralari.
Yantras refers only Anga Devata, Ayudhas, Vahanas, Parikaras, Sanga Sayudha Savahana Saparivarasya Devasya Puja Bhavati. Tesham Ayudhanam Parikara Devatanam Avaran Devatanam cha Jatra Jatra Avasthanam Bhavet Tasyaiva Prastutikaranam Yantram Bhavati. इति
तत्रापि इदानीं वैदिक जागे वयं पश्यामः नवग्रहस्य यन्त्रमस्ति।
आसन शुद्धौ आसन शुद्धि भवति तत्र आसनार्थे यन्त्रस्य निर्माणं भवति ततः परं सामान्यार्थ स्थापनं तत्रापि यन्त्र निर्माणं भवति विशेषार्थ स्थापनं भवति तत्रापि यन्त्र निर्माणं भवति यन्त्रं विना कोऽपि कार्यं न भवति।
Okay, thank you. Mark ji, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, okay, yes.
Even though the chairman Praful Kumar Mishra has given his remarks, but I have a small question for you. Can I ask you?
Yes, please.
Please guide us. What will be the future research of Shaiva Tantra?
What is the difference between?
What will be the future research in Shaiva Tantra? Please guide us. What will be the
research in Shaiva Tantra?
yes, future research?
Who does research?
You will do the research and you will guide us.
Huh?
You will guide us to do some research, no?
You want the list of names?
No names. The text and the tradition and the scholars, topics.
Oh, for the study of Shaivism, who started studying Shaivism?
No, any manuscript. I am talking about the manuscript related work. Yes.
Early manuscripts, the earliest ones I told you find in Nepal.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, and then the other one you find a lot of not early manuscripts but early texts you find surprisingly in places like Trivandrum. In Trivandrum they have her. You also find surprisingly you find some early manuscripts also if you go to Jaipur. There's Jaipur because they and of course what you have is the main thing there in Pondicherry. They made this beautiful collection and Professor Ganesan is an expert in that, I would like to say. he knows much better. So you have to look at each library. You sit down in the library and go through what is there. Asiatic Society has very interesting manuscripts, but then they don't give you copies. The Asiatic Society in Calcutta has a very good collection, so but they don't give you copies. So this is also a problem. I have a few manuscripts from Asiatic Society because I made those copies in the 80s when it was still possible. Okay, and Baroda has a very good collection. See the difference. There are two kinds of collection. One is a collection that is done very systematically by people guided by scholars. The Gaekwads, they sent pundits out all over India looking for manuscripts. So they made a very nice manuscript collection. The Asiatic Society, the British were there, the foreign scholars came, they made a very nice collection. Other places are like places of deposition, like Sampurnananda. Sampurnananda manuscripts came from everybody's homes without any particular selection. So it's the largest collection in the world by far, but the quality is not at all as you have in the Asiatic Society. No? So I think the problem is not just where the manuscripts are, it's by getting access to them. No, I would say, if the mentality is changing, which I very much hope, no, then everything starts to go up on the net, but not everything. You know, we have the example of someone whose name I don't want to mention, who goes around photographing every manuscript he can find. No? So he has photographed tens of thousands, but actually of those only a few are of any great value. So if these things are put up on the net, and we have access. If we could just have access to the Asiatic Society library, for example, you know, there are very good manuscripts there. And some of them just unique copies. Yeah? So these kind of things need to be done. Also, you need to go from one script to another very easily. So you have people, local people, for the manuscripts that you have, for example, in Kerala, in Trivandrum University, other places. Trivandrum University has surprising good number of old manuscripts. Because somehow in Kerala, for reasons I'm not a historian, I don't know the history there, they preserved from a very long time back association with North India, the early manuscript tradition. This happened also in Tamil Nadu, but after the Chola period that was lost. So those manuscripts, some of them, like the Dyczkowski was preserved, and Shaiva Dharma, but most of them then were also lost. No. So you have to go region by region, and a person has to go and sit and very carefully select. No? So I would suggest that people go, for example, to Jaipur and look at what's there. They have a catalogue, go to Trivandrum and look at what's there.
No, we will listen from you.
I
If
think
you have
you know
something.
these things, sir. We have to fight to have access. All my life working in this field, it's been a great battle since to lay hold on these matters.
It is very difficult to get access, no? Yes, that is true. NM has to improve.
If by some great
We'll do
grace
some
of God-
discussion in the latter session about how we can get the manuscripts easily.
Are you get the Asiatic Society manuscript?
It is very difficult to get from them.
Get all of them that are there. This is a particular collection where everything is valued. Because it is a very select collection. If you photograph everything in Sampurnana, then only 1 out of 1,000 will be of value. But if you photograph everything in the Asiatic Society, 80% will be valued. You understand you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Now, the thing is they won't give me one. Maybe if I came and with letter from Modi, they would allow me one. I don't know. You people are running the country, my goodness, I don't know. There's no use to have a manuscript, you can't read it. You can't study it. So if you please, my first suggestion, if you like, where a good manuscript, Asiatic Society. All right, and then dispersed in a lot of other places. And of the Nepalese collection, of course. And for Shaiva and the Shaiva, what you have in Pondicherry. what you people have collected in Pondicherry is wonderful. Not only what they have there, but all the documentation. Right? So this is what my immediate thing. But then there are regional studies. We hardly know anything about Orissa, for example. The tantras up there in the text. One last thing, if I may be allowed, because I'm taking a lot of your time. I've asked Anirban, who took over from me from Muktagoda, and he has done some very nice work in the past 3 years. And I left behind some manuscripts of Paddhatis. You sir were talking about Prayoga and practice, okay? Now these Paddhatis are a very regional phenomenon. They belong very much to the Kashmir Valley. But they are extremely important because these practices have been kept secret for centuries. Now the situation has completely changed, society has completely changed, and the only way to preserve these practices, and the only way to understand what they've done, is to begin typing these Paddhatis. There are tens and thousands of them, right? I selected a few back in the 90s, when it was still possible to get them from there, right? Now, I can buy many more also in Nepal, in Berlin. You can get 3 folios for €1. For 30,000, I get 9,000 folios, and if they're very selective. So this is a kind of case study. This is a very important case study. I'm not going to give you a lecture now about the deities and all the secret practices in Nepal. But this is, you find the same thing in Orissa. You find the same place in Kashmir. That if you look at the Paddhatis, this is something very regional and very characteristic of the place. And it will go hand in hand with anthropological study of the place. You would have the anthropologist who's out there in the field, finding out what people are doing out there in temples or in their homes, and make the equivalent that you find in the text would not be in the Tantras so much as in the Paddhatis. So this is a huge area of study that has been practically ignored all over it. Right? I am particularly interested in Nepal because for 20 years I went there every 2-3 times a year. No? So I have some knowledge of what is going on. But the same is going on in other places. So I would also recommend, it would be a very nice thing if someone also took that up. These manuscripts seem to be of little importance, minor. But if you look carefully, the particular regions, they have their value. Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, one question Ganesan is going to ask you.
No question. Hello, Mark. I'm happy to inform you that I have undertaken the study of Shaiva Paddhatis, Shaiva Siddhanta Paddhatis.
Sorry, what did you say?
Paddhati.
Paddhati.
Yeah, I have started my critically editing some Paddhatis, unpublished Paddhatis.
Can I give you some Paddhatis?
Yes, no.
When
I
you
have.
you have about 300 Nepalese Paddhatis.
No, I have.
400. I have about not many in my work, but
Yes,
you have to look in your own area.
I just want to add that I have undertaken study of critically editing the Paddhati, Shaiva Siddhanta Paddhatis.
Well, I mean, you know very well, Kriyakama Jyotika, most of them.
Yes, like that. And others also. There is one Nataraja Paddhati, like that I have undertaken. Critically
Some
edited.
part of that has been edited, I think. We put that up on Muktagoda.
Yes.
The other half needs to be finished, published. So it's Kriyakama Jyotika, no? It's a measure, but I'm not only thinking of these compendiums. I'm trying to discover what people are doing. If you are doing for example, in the north of Kerala, there are 13 Kali temples. Those people say that they are following the Kashmiri Panchavaha tradition, right? But the Paddhatis they are following, in actual fact, someone has been investigating that. I'm working with that. I'm simply advising and he's telling me things. He's informing me mostly. Mostly now the introduction of Kali, but he found one old manuscript, half in Malayalam and half in Sanskrit, in which we do originally find the original form of the worship of these Kalis. Okay? Now that is a very valuable fact, because there is only one Paddhati in existence. in Sanskrit, of which there are 2 manuscripts, and both of these are in Nepal, for that particular form of worship. Right? So when you go into these Padatis, a lot of them, you have to limit yourself, you have to look and search carefully and find what is the value. It's like looking for manuscripts of value. Right? And it helps, I think, at least the cases I know, to do that together with what people are actually doing. The prayogas, what people are doing in the temples or in their homes, and trying to find the parallels in the Padati. You won't find those parallels so easily in the Tantras, because the Tantras were written centuries ago. People stopped reading the Tantras centuries ago, and what they're doing now is they mostly follow the extracts that are in the Padatis just simply for convenience. This, you know,
Yes.
this is from all over India.
Yes.
So okay. So if you ask it, I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay.
I can tell you about Nepal.
Is there
I
any
can't tell you
question,
about
any more,
Nepal.
any query?
You know better than me about that. That's
Any
fine.
query from anybody? Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very kind of you all to have me, to invite me. And yes.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. That was Dr. Mark Dyczkowski from Germany. Okay, I'm sorry.
Hello? Yes?
Carry on. Continue.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, she was asking a question.
No, sir, I was not asking any question. I was thanking you for being a part of this program.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Very
sir.
kind of you and all of you, and it was a great pleasure. And I really hope, I would like very much if you manage to take me up in what I'm suggesting, that you could help me to complete my work, if some of you or you find people who may be interested in that. Thank you very much for having me, and it's been my honor and my pleasure. Okay? I'm sorry, I need to go now.
Dhanyavad. Thank you. Proceed for lunch.
I request you all to join us for lunch on 5th floor guest house.